10 years on. It's hard to believe that Halo Reach has been around for over a decade now. For me, Reach marks the end of my high school education, the light at the end of my tunnel. Because it was around exam time, I believe I made the correct choice in focusing all my time on Halo Reach to be the best. Anyone who was around me at the time knows that Bungie had put a rank cap to Lieutenant Colonel. The only way to lift it was by completing a milestone of daily and weekly challenges. Naturally, I took this as my duty and focused all my spare time into doing these when I wasn't working. I didn't study, and, it shows today. I got in at midnight on the 14th. Back when midnight launches were a thing, mind you, because internet's better here in Australia now, so people just buy it anyway. After unboxing my Legendary Edition and new console, I spent all my Subway money on it, worth every penny. Makes a plasma grenade sound when you press the disc tray. I loaded into the campaign immediately and was instantly spammed with party invites from my American friends. By the time it was midnight for them, I had already finished the game on Solo Legendary, which is around about 11 a.m. my time. And now I was just going back and getting some achievements I had already missed. If they came to hear me beg and all that. Day 1, I had already had 47 out of 49 achievements. Strange to feel nostalgia for a game that seems so fresh in memory. It's not like Game Boy from the late 90s. For the final day of school, I got to bring in the Xbox and we stayed in the art room all day playing Reach. Good times were had. Culturally, Reach was the second most significant Halo release. Everyone knew it was Bungie's final installment before it was handed off to 343 Industries. So, how well is it held up? If we don't count Master Chief Collection numbers, Halo Reach is the second most played Halo title. Considering Halo 4 came out after, and it's struggling to beat Halo 3 for monthly average users, I'd say Halo Reach is doing exceptionally well. For a decade-old game, I was pleasantly surprised to find an active population of 1K players, and even find a couple of matches. Bungie definitely managed to set the benchmark high before they handed off the series. I think a bit of life has been breathed back into the 360 version of Halo Reach when it had been announced for MCC. While a couple of years ago there were issues when they made it backwards compatible, namely it had horrible frame rate issues, but it is still highly playable. And in my opinion, it's probably the best Halo game. I know it's controversial to say, especially when Halo 3 and 2 are such masterpieces, but with Reach, it had so much to offer at launch. A campaign with multiple diverse ways to play. You could approach most missions with no one same method. Tip of the Spear, Winter Contingency, Oni Sword Base, New Alexandria, and the package all come to mind. A multiplayer that had so much polish it was extremely hard to fault. The beta, it's super awesome. That came out in May, did a lot to ease much of the fan base concerns. While Armor Lock and Sprint had made their way into the final product of the game, it didn't feel game-breaking. I remember people were complaining about it. It just seemed like, shut the fuck up. It doesn't really matter. Mind you, Halo 3 had equipment. So at the time, it was a bunch of crying on the forums, Armor Lock slowed down the game. It was almost always a guaranteed kill, though. Sprint is an extremely contentious subject amongst the community, considering it's now a core component of the gameplay. But thankfully, Bungie was competent enough to design the maps with these features in mind, and unlike some other special company that doesn't think about these things, the multiplayer was phenomenal and almost mirrored the quality of Halo 3. A big piece of the game was the return of Firefight, but with a less static version than the one we got in ODST. We got one that we could customize and have better fun with. Gruntpocalypse is a personal favorite of mine, just popping on some tunes and headshots for days. Just seeing the confetti flying out, easy. Grinding for the commendations, that's all I needed. Generator defense was a great new concept, especially if you could get the connection to be stable enough for PvP. If you didn't have that stable connection, what would happen is you would just have a big frame rate loss, and you'd just be playing at like 12 frames per second. So it's nice to have a mode you could play offline, and not to mention the fact you had matchmaking for it. So it was a big plus at the time. Now, let's talk about Forge. This is easily one of the biggest selling points of Reach. Everyone was excited to see what kind of maps would be made, and of course, with this creative expansion, the custom games had way more potential. Infection modes could be massively customized with these new maps by the community. Damn shame Fat Kid wasn't the same, though. God, Fat Kid, well, those are the times. We did get Speed Halo, I must say, that was quite a unique experience. Though Forge World wasn't without my own personal negatives, like the gray palette, I don't know what the deal is, why they could have given us a little bit more, but whatever. Aside from the developer-made maps within Forge World, which are all remakes of previous maps aside from like one, I hated Forge World maps in the matchmaking rotation. Something about them, the spawns and that grayscale, I just wanted to skip them and go for an actual developer-made map. It's even worse with Big Team Battle all taking place on Forge World, except for maybe like Boneyard and Spire, but they're just not really good. Yeah, it's just something about the spawns. The actual maps are just far more interesting, and they provide better combat situations. I think 343 Industries missed the point with Halo 5's Forge maps being the only thing in rotation, but that's a video for another day. There are just so many simple quality of life changes in Forge mode that made Forge World a great addition to the Halo series. Now, the campaign. This is my favorite campaign across any Halo title. I feel like every enemy is fun to fight, even on Legendary. All the characters of Noble Team are memorable. While they may not have the charisma or flesh development of previous characters, I'd like to say in defense of Reach, Halo Combat Evolved had pretty much cardboard cutout characters of any sci-fi that had already happened, with some of them just being likable enough to be brought back in the sequels, like, Johnson and 343 Guilty Spark. So if Noble Team had more than just one game, I'm sure they would be more loved by the fans. But I know I said I finished Legendary solo on the first day, and I kept replaying Reach's campaign. And I still try to do moderate speedruns from time to time. No one mission was the same or looked the same, even had that same feel. Even a lot of the campaign had too many firefight sections, which was a big complaint. People seem to forget that Halo 2 had similar sections, and so was Halo 3. So I overlooked that aspect of the campaign, but the thing that gets me about every Halo game is the soundtrack. Marty really nailed the score on this one. With previous 1 to 3 entries we got with strong military sounds and a bit of metal in the background, but mostly Gregorian chants and that quite tribal and alien music to fit the atmosphere of the missions. ODST was a phenomenally different game, and as such it needed a phenomenally different soundtrack. Quite possibly his best work in the series, with the smooth jazz for Rookie at night, and epic orchestral scores with soft drumming. Office of Naval Intelligence and New Mombasa Police Department headquarters are standout tracks. But the somber tone throughout the missions in Halo Reach, Tip of the Spear's final scene, the whole mission Long Night of Solace, Winter Contingency, Epilogue, even the menu suite. The alien tones of the series are mostly dropped and instead were given a much stronger military heroic sound with a somber melancholy tone to give us something magical. A highly notable example throughout the campaign is how the music changes during character deaths. It's often overlooked, but the music plays a key part. The soft piano that plays after Kat is killed is... I have no words for it. It's truly remarkable. It knows how to pull the right strings, and it's something that 343 Industries has struggled to grasp with the series, which is why we're seeing a return to the classic music of the series. Now, I'm coming back around to matchmaking and the fact there's still such a small but active population. Seeing the comparisons across all titles, Halo 5 had a peak of 10k unique players. On a weekend primetime 5 years after launch? That's a bit sad, isn't it? Halo Reach had twice that 5 years after launch, and like I said, we aren't counting Master Chief Collection numbers. Something about how it plays feels tight and refined. Nothing in the sandbox feels broken, except for maybe the Banshee. That thing could fly super fast and evade shots. It just became a struggle for any untrained players in Big Team Battle, but whatever. Bungie scrapped most of the useless weapons from 3 and opted out the BR for a new weapon, the DMR. Bungie had said that getting a kill with the DMR will feel satisfying because it requires patience and skill to get good with. I agree. 10 years later, and I feel satisfaction getting the headshot with the DMR over any precision weapon across any Halo game. The shotgun was perfect. It didn't feel busted like the combat rifle from CE or worthless like 3's fucking pepper spray. It actually hit the sweet spot. The Covenant weapons felt powerful now, I recall a match where me and my friend challenged ourselves to go for plasma pistol kills only, and to our surprise, was actually able to kill people. I think the only exception to my statement is probably the plasma repeater. That thing's fucking useless. I'm glad it never came back. Then, with the vehicles, I feel like they're just beefy. They feel like actual vehicles. I love the Scorpion and Reach the best. Bungie did their best job to make it feel like a real threat whenever it was on the screen, in both multiplayer and in the package. But all the vehicles feel less like a toy that 3 and 2 did. I'm going to move on now to map design. Map design was kind of okay, with a few being exceptional. A big complaint was that the maps were lifted straight from the campaign. But if you actually know about Reach, you would know the developed maps first and implemented them into the campaign. So, suck it, tryhards. The launch maps that stood out were maps like Sword Base for its dynamic changes in long range to medium range, and plenty of close range engagements. Boardwalk to me was another standout map in the rotation, but it wasn't until we had the Noble map pack that we were given the best map, Anchor 9. A reminder that the Noble map pack was Bungie's final support of Reach before their departure. Anchor 9 was reminiscent of such intimate battles like boarding action, elongation, and turf. It's a classic Bungie map, fun to play, looks great. It's just a damn shame that it come in the form of a premium map pack. In terms of atmosphere, all the DLC map packs, Reaches have the most beautiful skyboxes of any in Halo history. Highlands and Condemned are great, but like again, it's a damn shame that they were barely played on because 343 didn't make it required in core playlists to have the map packs. So, now in 2020, where does Reach stand in judgment? Has age made it better? Not necessarily, but it definitely aged slower than other games of its time. This resulted in a classic title that serves as a reminder of how good Halo used to be and serves as the minimum standard for fan expectations for a mainstream Halo title. Yes, that is a jab at Halo 5 and the poor quality of its launch. Bungie gave us a decade of care and love, responding to fan feedback. The credits of Reach set this in stone, because everything came at launch ready for Reach. The community and developer support makes me put Halo Reach as arguably the best Halo game against Halo 3. Now, like I said, Halo 2 is phenomenal, but it's a conversation for another time. But I think that's really all I have to say. So I'm going to leave you with this. If you like this video, please drop me a subscribe. It would really help me out.